So, welcome everyone to our next satsang, and I'm very, very pleased to say that I have a very close friend of mine, Calvin Coyle's joining us today. So, Calvin is a very interesting, I was going to say young man, but he's certainly getting on these days. He's no longer young. And Calvin and I met a long, long time ago. And the reason that I asked Calvin to come on to this satsang is to let you see into his personal journey of his life, but also a life that he's, devoted to making a difference and helping others, and what led him to that place, and how he sort of found that purpose for himself. So, Calvin, welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, Brett. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us
Time
and
for
to
you.
share this time with us.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit, Calvin, to the early days. What was it like in your life growing up? What happened for you?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, wonderful to be here. And anytime I get to connect with you is always a privilege and a pleasure. So thank you for your support in my journey as well. I wouldn't be here speaking to you if it wasn't for you. So thank you. My journey, I had a beautiful childhood. I was born in the northeast of England in a place called Sunderland, which is not the most exciting place. Certainly don't see any Instagram influencers going there, put it that way. But my grandparents made a decision when I was about 3 or 4. And they made a decision to move to Australia. And they did that because they anticipated that the UK was going to get worse, not better, and that the life that they wanted to create, they wanted a better life for their grandchildren, of which I was the first. And my sister had just been born. So I come over to Australia when I'm 4. We had a very normal childhood in a lot of ways, that the sort of lower middle class, and, went to a great little school, and, we didn't afford the normal uniforms, but, we got by, and dad was a salesman and mum was a hairdresser. So, just very humble. They ended up going through a divorce when I was about 7, and that really changed everything for me. And, when there's a
So
separation.
why did that change everything, Calvin? What happened? What perspective did that event give to you? Because a lot of what we'll be talking about in these meetings is obviously, our conditioning and the things that we've been through. So how did that change as a 7-year-old? How did that change your view of the world?
Yeah, look, it did in a big way. To put it into context, so I'm the firstborn grandchild in my family. I'm also the first male, obviously, as well. And my granddad on my mum's side wanted a son. He had 3 daughters, so I was the son. And on my dad's side, obviously, we just doted to have a boy. So I grew up in a household which had certain beliefs around what the role of a male was in a family unit, right? Which was to provide and protect for the girls, which is what my granddad had done, what my dad attempted to do. The challenge that we had, though, was that when mum and dad separated, my belief system at that time, 7, 8 years old, was that when their dad's not going to be here, but dad needs to be here to do all the things that dads are meant to do. And so that means that I need to become dad when he's not here. And so immediately I went from, say, 7 to 37. And I started to model and in very much in many ways. And I really learned this from working with Brett in the years later. But it was the case of if I'm going to be like my father, that's the easiest way for us to connect. So if I'm like him, he's going to be, he'll love and support me and we'll connect more. But also it has a double-edged sword to that, because now I also get to be the father figure that I think I'm meant to be for my mum and my sister. The challenge with that, though, was mum divorced dad for many of the same reasons and patterns of behavior that I then embraced. So then we obviously clashed as I was growing up as well. And, the biggest thing was that I just became more serious. I became more focused. It was less about me. It was more about the family unit. And I remember growing up and mum saying to me, I just want you to have your childhood. I just want you to be a kid, right? Because I was always so serious about everything. And she didn't realize I'd already let that part of me go. Now, I was never resentful of that. I'm actually enormously grateful because I get to do this work now. It was because of that put me on this trajectory. But you make these decisions when you're a kid and you don't know all the right answers, and you think, okay, there's a lack here. There's going to be an absence of love. I need to fill that void. And then as a result of that, I became a different person. That had me down this pathway.
So what was the change that happened at that point? So obviously, in any of these circumstances that we go through, there's a positive side to that, which, as you say, it gave you the ability to, I guess, love more. Yeah. And the downside was what for you at that age, do you think? That
Well,
became more serious? Was that the downside?
Yeah, I think I never really felt like I was missing out on anything because I felt like I had a
No.
bigger purpose than that. But you could certainly
Right.
appreciate that as an adult. You go, well, kids should just be kids, right? And you've got the rest of your life to be an adult. So maybe there's that aspect. But certainly what it did was it it shifted the way that I looked at the world. And in doing so, it meant that the relationships that I would then go on to attract all came from a very different paradigm. So I'll give you an example. You know, after that moment in time, my friendship group started to change by default. And by the time I got to high school, all of my friends, whether that be my male friends or my female friends or my intimate partners, all of those people had one thing in common, which was their dads were not in their lives. And I was
Wow.
effectively the father figure or the
Wow.
stable, secure, structured one. So my best friend Quinn didn't know his father until he was in his late 20s. Then I would then end up dating, a couple of girls through high school, and only a few of them, but every single one of them, Jade didn't know her father. Her father had left her mother when she was in the womb. Shahara didn't know her father. And then my previous partner, Cherish, she knew her dad, but he would see her maybe 2 times a year, and they lived in the same state. So, that was a pattern of behavior. I then go to university, same patterns of behavior. My best friend Holly didn't really speak to her dad. She referred to her dad as his name. I think his name was Phil. She didn't call him dad. She called him Phil. Such was the strain of their relationship.
So at that point, were you sort of aware of those patterns, or
Nah,
that didn't come until
nah,
later? Right. You
no,
didn't
no
see any
idea.
of that.
No
Any of
idea.
that together at all.
Nah, you can't see the forest for the trees, right? And
Yeah.
I always thought that it was about them, not about me. I always thought, oh, I'm the stable, secure, strong one. I've got, for want of a better word, my shit together, and I didn't. I just felt like I did, and so
Yeah.
I'm attracted. They're attracted to me because of my strengths. I didn't also realize that maybe I'm attracted to them as well because of the not the weakness. That's not the word I'm looking for, but the yin and the yang, the polarity of that. I didn't realize that for a number of years, and the beauty and the irony of it is, it was only when I started to heal the relationship with my own father. And part
Yes.
of that was releasing expectations. And part of that was actually acknowledging who is the man that's my father and not who do I want him to be. Because I didn't actually become my dad when he left. I became the man that I thought he was meant to be when I became the archetype. And so then I would get frustrated in the years that have passed, going, why are you not doing these things? This is what you're meant to be doing. This is why I did all the things that I've done, because that's what I was meant to be doing, right? And then I realized, actually, you've never done that. When I look back without the rose-colored glasses, I was holding you up to this standard on this pedestal, which was you meant to do all these things, which is what I was attempting to do in my own life. But there was never
Mm.
a habit or a history of him ever doing those things. So as soon as I sort of broke through that and sort of released that, the relationship that I've got with my father now is just wonderful. Where I've got a beautiful relationship because I don't expect anything of him. I've
Yes.
completely surrendered this expectation of you being this hero or model for me. Instead, I've just gone, this is who I am now, not who I wanted, who I wanted you to be, but you weren't. That's okay. And I'm actually grateful because that made me who I am. And as soon as that shifted, by the way, which was enormously painful, I then started to attract different people. And my wife that I now have, we have an unbelievable relationship, so different. And she's got an amazing relationship with her father, and I've got an amazing relationship with him. So I don't think I would have ever been with her had I not had that change.
Yes, absolutely. So at that point, when you decided to get your shit together, or feel like at least that you
Yeah.
had your shit together, is that where the confidence began? Because you had to have that shit together? So was it
Yeah.
sort of like, I'll fake it until I make it at that point?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't love fake it till you make it. I like work on it until you own it. But
Yeah.
certainly, as you know me in the early days, Brett, someone said to me a couple of weeks ago, "You have unjustified self-confidence." And I thought, what a beautiful what a beautiful compliment. So I was always quite confident, partly because being the only boy in a female family, I didn't have any cousins or brothers that for 18 years. So I was literally the only, boy in a whole family, and so you get obviously absolutely spoiled and treated like a prince.
Right.
And so I very much grew up in a huge environment of self-esteem and love, and that was nurtured into me. But certainly, then you add confidence with responsibility, and if you can rise to that level of responsibility, then that really builds quite a solid foundation for yourself. And
Yes.
so I was already confident. Stack that,
Yes.
And then from there, that obviously developed. And I think one of the things that I realized, and not at that age, but as I got older, was that if I applied myself, I'd normally do pretty well, and that I would do things and I would succeed, not because necessarily I was particularly talented, but rather just because I was that confident and certain and committed that that was the edge. That's what made the difference. And when I realized that, I was like, shit, if I just try harder than everybody else, if I'm more prepared, if I'm better, I'm better prepared, then that gives me the edge when other people are far more talented than I am. And I was fortunate enough to be selected for a specialist school, which was drama. And there was, a couple hundred kids applied and they selected 40. I was one of those 40. I probably had no right to be there, but I succeeded despite of the talent around me, because I was just more committed, more prepared, and hungrier. And I think that's very much a pattern that my dad had. Tremendously talented soccer player, but very hungry, very driven. Obviously, when you work in sales, you have to have that edge to you. And that's certainly something that was developed for me.
And what I've noticed is that those various things that we've been talking about, if we haven't been through circumstances where they're conditioned in, or we've gained them by events that have happened to us, then what we need to do is to literally give those things to ourselves. So you said before that you grew up in an environment where you were treasured, being the only child, only boy, etc. And you were given a lot of love and attention, which obviously helped build that self-confidence. I know for Marie and myself, with our son Chase, because he's dyslexic, we've had to work very hard, particularly in the 0 to 10 years,
Yes,
in making him feel like that's not a disadvantage. In fact, it's an advantage. Look at Einstein, look at Cher, look at all these other people that have had dyslexia and built this frame for him around the fact that it's not a negative. So I think a big takeaway from what you just said is that if we haven't been given it, we have to give it to ourselves. We have to build it ourselves, around ourselves, in terms of how we're thinking, how we're feeling, and how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
So you've now grown up, you're a teenager, doing the normal teenage things, dating girls, trying to decide what you're going to do with your life.
Yeah.
And you make a decision, I think, at the end of school to go to university. What developed there as you went to university? What started to happen for you there? Because it seems like, what you've said so far is, okay, I've now stepped up. I've decided that I'm going to be the man of the family. I'm going to rescue my family.
Yes.
I'm going to be the one that's going to hold them all together.
Yeah. And
that seems to be starting to spread out to more than just your family.
Yes.
Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So a bit of backstory, particularly because this is a very spiritual group, I'll share it, and I know it'll be received in the right way. So on my dad's side, my grandma in the UK, Elizabeth Coyles, is a medium and very spiritual woman. And my granddad, who has now passed, wasn't spiritual in any way and completely rejected her spiritual beliefs. But by the time of his passing, you can't resist, the evidence of spirit in your life. And so he certainly died a believer, but he wasn't born one. And so Gran had shared with my mum and dad and her other son and his wife that there was a child coming to the world to do great things, and that it was sent from the heavens and from the light to change the world. And this was almost like a prophecy, if you will, that was shared well before either of the two of them had children. And then my mum falls pregnant, so does my auntie. And so anyway, I'm born, and she, pulls into the hospital, and she sees a rainbow appear over Sunland General Hospital, and she says, "I knew you had arrived." So without going too much more into it than that, effectively, I was born on my mum's side, being the only boy unspoiled in that environment. But on my dad's side, I was born with very much a sort of spiritual destiny, if you will, that my granddad shared. And it was something that my mum and dad had believed in enough to obviously share with me, and Gran believed in it, so she shared with me as well. So I grew up very much not only with, and to be fair, when my mum and dad are separating, that's not really on my mind in any way. But as I'm getting older and I'm connecting more about that, and obviously at that point, my gran and granddad were more in my life on my dad's side because they still lived in the UK. This became more apparent to me. And so that's probably
were you brought up with any other spiritual belief besides that?
Nah, no. So we
Right.
believed in spirit. I mean, I think I was christened Church of England, but we never went to church. We're not a religious family. And Dad's spirituality probably was quite dormant as well until he went through some really difficult times in his life later on, and he relied on that faith. But for a
Yes.
long time, that certainly when Mum and Dad were together, Mum's not spiritual in that way. She believes, and she would draw crystals or cards, but that's probably it's retail spirituality, if you will. So fast forward a couple of years, I'm now in my teenage years. I'm doing drama and that sort of stuff as well. Now I'm starting to believe that I'm here for something more. I don't know what that is. You can't connect the dots looking forward, as Jobs would say. You can only connect it looking back. And so my vision is I want to potentially either go to university and I want to either become a lawyer, because I think that that's a way of me being able to make a difference, or I want to go out there and I want to start my own business. And so my dad and my whole family has always been self-employed. So I thought that would be a career path. So I ended up going to university to study law and commerce. And I realized after the first day that law was not for me. I'm not intellectually wired in that way. I'm a great communicator and negotiator, but I don't have the discipline to sit there and read a textbook. And I also can't really read or write either. So I gave that up and instead focused on my business. But something amazing happened. And I believe that there are moments of serendipity in our lives or destiny in our lives where if we pursue what we believe is the right thing to do, it all works out. So when I leave high school, most people either do one of two things: take a gap year or they go to university. So I took a gap year because I wanted to see the world and I believed in the importance of travel. So I take off with my partner at the time. We do Europe, we come back, and then at that point, I then apply for university, and UWA had opened up an entrepreneurship program just that year. And so I thought, this is perfect, I'll apply for that program. I then started law school day one. They're doing the orientation, and there's this group at university, which was called at that time SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise. Effectively, it was a community organization, a group of uni kids. They got together that built sort of these non-for-profit based businesses that were there to make sort of positive social good. And they did that really well. And at the end of the year, they would all fly to Sydney with all the universities together, and then they would present to a board of directors, if you will, which was the sort of the CEOs and the CFOs of the Fortune 50 in Australia. They would present, and then those judges, the heavyweights of industry, would rank them and say, hey, you guys did really well. And if you win the national competition, they flew you to the World Cup. And then they had 100 countries that did this. And so I'm sitting there and going, that's exactly what I'm here for, because it was the theater and it was the drama and it was the business and it was the showmanship, everything that I had trained for previously. I thought, this is perfect for me. So within probably 90 days, I was, the COO of that organization. I was running it. I was leading 3 or 4 projects. I'd taken over in my first year and had some fantastic experiences. We won a couple of national championships, went to the World Cup a couple of times, just an amazing opportunity to do that. And that was really where the passion for wanting to make an impact in people's lives and realizing that, hey, I've got something here just because of the upbringing, just being around dad on the phones when he was making sales, or being around my granddad when he was running his business, or my gran when she ran her interior decorating business. I picked up stuff that they didn't teach you in a textbook that gave me an edge. And I started to realize maybe I've got some stuff already in the unconscious mind that's really quite effective in that way. So that's really where that next step started to blossom for me. And I ended up spending far more of my time at university doing that than I ever did in my classroom doing my studies. And I'd given up on the degree component. It was, there's a saying, P's get degrees. So, if passes are just as good as HDs, I knew I was never going to compete with some of these unbelievably smart people, particularly a lot of the Asian students coming over from China that are just unbelievable minds. I was never going to compete with them academically. I had to play to my strengths. In the same way for Chase, I didn't have the ability to write a great essay, but I could deliver a fantastic speech. So I realized very early, just stick to your strengths. And I figured that the way I was going to win the game, whatever that game of life is, was focused on experience and trying to build as much of that as possible. And that saw me go to the deserts of Australia and to the slums of Africa, and it's part of that process, and see quite a bit of the world with that organization, helping make a difference in the world as part of that.
So what impact did you think that had on you, seeing those things? Did that just reinforce that was the right journey for you?
Yeah, I remember going to Africa for the first time, and I'm in Kenya, and I'm working with a group of women, and we called it Mama Shuja. That was the project name, and it stands for Warrior Woman in Swahili. And here's this year,
Love that name.
yeah, it was beautiful, right? And I've got a group of 18 women that, all imagine the African culture, right? So they've got the headpieces and the whole thing is just amazing. And we're teaching this group of women in a sea container in the middle of a rubbish tip. That's the home, that's the slum, right? It's just an unbelievable experience. And you realize something in that moment, by the way, as well. We talk about dissociation and about how your brain deletes, distorts, and generalizes. I was actually tremendously calm in that environment. I'm thinking, why am I not freaking out right now? Because your brain goes, this is way too much. So I'm just going to delete most of this stuff, and I'm just going to help you focus on whatever's on in front of you, right? And you don't realize how that coping mechanism is built until you're into a really challenging situation, right? That sort of everything else just sort of disappears. But I remember leaving that environment. I would be 20 years old. And I think maybe at that time, maybe we had just met Brett, or we were about to meet, somewhere around that time. But I remember leaving that experience going, I don't have a business. I haven't even finished my business degree, but here I am in Africa helping a group of women start their own businesses. And we had a microfinance grant, about 40,000 USD, to help start businesses. Those businesses still going today. Really proud of that. But I remember leaving that experience with two deep knowings. One, there are people in the world that need my help. Number two, I can help them. And, I think most of us realize there's people in the world that need help, but there's the belief that I'm ready and I can help. These women didn't care if I had a uni degree. They didn't care if I'd started a business. They just go, my life right now is this, and I want to go from here to here. Can you help me do that? Forget about the ego or the arrogance or the pieces of paper or the awards or any of that bullshit. Can you help me do that? Because when you're in that environment, and to be fair, it's not that much different, I would imagine, to a single mom or dad that's living in Australia or the UK or the US that's just struggling to get by. It's all relative. But can you help me go from A to B? And I had the skills to do that. I didn't, I hadn't made millions of dollars, and, I hadn't done any of that stuff, but I could help them do those things because I had that knowledge already. And I think so many people underestimate what's inside of them. And as a result, they never help somebody go from A to B because they think they've got to complete the whole process before they can do that. And I think that's a real mistake, because you miss a lot of fulfillment along the journey, which is, I think, quite important to actually finishing it in the first place.
I think it's a very important realization to have. That is what you said earlier about unjustified self-confidence.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a desire to make a difference, that you need a certain level of skill. It's just that you believe you can make that difference, and you're prepared to do whatever's necessary, or take the risks, or just believe in yourself that if you take those steps forward, then things will start to happen. And I think in your life, and certainly in many lives that I've been involved in, that process of what I call the divine, that force, that energy, is always there, as you said, making those synchronicities available. So every step, as we're listening to your story, every step is leading somewhere.
Yes.
It's definitely leading somewhere. So
Absolutely.
How did we meet? I cannot even remember now how you came to end up in my office one day. Yeah. I think you rang me up, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know, I don't even remember how you got to know about me. Did someone tell you about me, or what happened?
No. So so at this time, probably around about the age of 16, this is before we met. I think we met when I was about 18, 19 years old. And so at this time I'm at uni, but my previous partner, her mother was a huge influence on me. Amazing spiritual lady, used to be a doula and a psychologist and an educator, and just a beautiful woman that had gone through some hard times. And she, shared with me a variety of beautiful things. But one of the things that she showed me was a video of Tony Robbins doing a program called Date with Destiny. And I didn't know who Tony was, and I didn't know what Date with Destiny was, but it fucking blew my mind, because I was like, wow, here is a platform for someone that has got a passion to share, an ability to teach and educate, and obviously some showmanship. I could do that. Like, I've got a couple of those things in me. I reckon I can make that happen. And it was more, you've got thousands of people in a room for 5 to 7 days. Imagine the changes that you could make in somebody's life with that level of attention and the power of that. I mean, that's really a force multiplier. So I thought maybe my passion here and maybe where I'm going with this is into personal development and doing some sort of seminar work or education or speaking. And I already had a gift for that because I'd obviously done my drama training. And so I thought, well, the easiest way to take that first step is to find somebody that is in my local environment. Proximity is power. If I go and work for a company that's already doing this, then that's going to allow me to get an understanding of the industry. And I've always believed in internships and that practical approach. And so there was only 2 companies in WA that were doing that. Yourself with, at that time, Create, and the guy called Wilbert Mollier, if you remember as well, from, I think, Dynamic Creations.
Yes.
Anyway, I called both of you.
Now in Holland, actually.
Sorry?
He's now in Holland.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I called both of you. I spoke to him first, and I sat down and said, "Hey, I know you're not advertising, but I want to come work with you." And he basically said, "Well, thanks, but no thanks, because you'll just come here and take my stuff and then do your own thing." And then I sat down with you, and you said, "Okay, well, this is interesting," and you encouraged me to do your program, which I did. And I always remember you saying something to me, which had a huge impact at that time. You said, "Calvin, I got no doubt you'll be confident. I've got no doubt you'll be successful because you're quite a confident man." He says, and you said, I remind you, a lot of you at that age as well. He says, "I don't doubt you'll be successful. I just wonder how big the trail of destruction will be when you're done." And I never really considered the implications of my sort of bullet a gate, just go and make shit happen. I never considered the implications of that, because you don't when you're 19, 20. And that's how it started. I remember sitting in your office in Adderale and in Applecross, and having that conversation with you. So yeah, what a crazy start to the journey.
Absolutely. But again, just the synchronicity of that, and the blessings that I certainly take out of my life to have had that impact in your life, just in that way, because I was available, I was there at that time, I was in that space. That those things, flow on in ways that often we can't possibly comprehend, but I'm certain that the divine certainly can.
Yeah.
So at that point, I think you asked me for a job, and I said, well, yeah, I could be interested. And I think I offered you $50,000 a year, and you wanted $100,000 a year. Yeah. So we couldn't get to a meeting point with that, right?
Yeah.
And you had done the course, which I think had an impact on you in terms of seeing a lot of those patterns that you had been running.
Yeah.
And then you decided, okay, well, fair enough. If he's not going to give me a job, I'll go and find some other way of doing that. So what happened after that?
Yeah. So we met when I was 19. We had that interaction. You said, "Come and do the course." I did that. And then I went my own way and you went your own way. And then we ended up bumping into each other at Tony Robbins' conference, actually the Success Resources event with Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki. And I thought, oh, let's connect back up again. And then I ended up coming to do some stuff. And yeah, I mean, look, I think about it now. Honestly, I think about that conversation, and I remember saying to you something just so outrageous as I said something like, "I don't get out of bed for less than $100,000 a year or something." And I'm thinking, fuck, here I am. I'm not making fucking anything. And you and Marie knew that. And to your credit, you let me down gently. And I, to be fair, if someone asked me for that money now, I'd say no fucking way. But whatever it was, I had that belief, and it is what it is. But I remember in my final year of university, at that time, I had built a non-for-profit organization, and I'd set up my own company called Bright Lights. And effectively, the premise of that was get uni students together, connect them with small businesses to see if we could try and help. And my mindset going into my final year of uni was, let's start with the end in mind. The end in mind is one of two things. One, and I sort of had probably parked the personal development angle of that because I didn't know how that was going to happen for me. So I'd really had Bright Lights is going to become so successful that I'm going to make all of this money that I don't need to worry about getting a job after uni, because Bright Lights is going to pay me, 6 figures. Or it's going to be so successful that a management consulting firm like Boston Consulting Group or Accenture or someone is going to headhunt me, and they're going to give me a heap of money as well. So my decision at the beginning of that year was, I'm not applying for anything. I'm not applying for any jobs, any internship programs. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to focus my attention on creating this business really successfully. And at the end of the year, I'm either going to have a heap of money or someone's going to headhunt me. And that was my setup. Now, to be fair, I expected someone to come knocking pretty early, and no one fucking came knocking. So it's now November at the end of that year, and I've got no job opportunities lined up at all. And your offer of 50 grand's looking way more attractive at this point, right? And then I remember I'm sitting in the Reed Library in UWA, and I get an email from a guy called Chris Howard. Now, again, serendipity. You're the one that told me about Chris Howard. I remember sitting there and you were telling me about Tony and about how he built his business. And you told me about this guy called Chris Howard. I remember you saying, look, he's not as charismatic or as powerful as Tony, but he's done a really good job. And, he's more of the training of how to do it as opposed to the interventions. And so I think at that point, after our conversation, you'd encourage me, look, read as much as you can, watch as much as you can, just download it all, and then just start following some of these people. So I ended up following Chris Howard. Hadn't heard anything from him since then. And, I was doing some coaching with a guy that was a little bit older than me, and we were doing a contra, like $40 a session each, but I would transfer him 40, he would transfer me 40, so we felt like we were getting paid. And he had wanted to set up what's called a lead magnet, which I didn't know what that was at the time, but effectively it's where you put in your details and you get something back, and it's designed to give you some content. And he was trying to do that. I said, yeah, no problems. Look, I'll figure out how to do that for you and I'll let you know. I had no idea. And then Chris sends me this email about this webinar about becoming a transformational coach and an NLP master practitioner and a speaker and making all this money. I thought, fuck, that's great. I'll do that. So I click on this webinar, and I'm meant to be studying my final exam for strategic management, literally my last day at university. And I end up watching this 90-minute webinar with Chris Howard. And I never met the guy before. I watch it, and at the end of it, he tried to sell a $9,000 package. And the sale was book in to speak to one of my team members and we'll do a strategy session. And then, we'll have a conversation. So I thought, shit, I'll just test this funnel so I can learn the steps for one of my clients. So I opted in. Fast forward a couple of days later, I thought nothing of it. Finish university. I'm actually now doing a personal development seminar with Mike Tyson. That's when he came to Perth. Remember when he did that seminar, Brett, and he spoke at the convention center, not the convention center, the arena. So I'm there, I get a call from Chris's team. Hey, Chris would like to do the call with you personally. I'm like, fuck, this is unbelievable. I mean, this is amazing. I didn't realize Chris didn't have anybody else. He lost everything at this point. He's on the bones of his ass, but the frame was his assistant said, you've been selected. So I thought, this is pretty amazing. So I booked in for the following week. And then over the weekend, I'd done my research and realized, actually, here's a guy that had made like $100 million, but he, drugs, sex, alcohol, women, the whole thing, ended up getting put into rehab. He loses everything. He goes bankrupt. He comes back out, not realizing that had happened. He just got shafted. And he moves to Bali. And again, another bit of serendipity. He was with Richard Branson. He says to Branson, how is it that how do you deal with the stress? He says, I have no stress. He says, if there was something that happened to the health of myself, my family, that's a problem. He says, if Virgin collapsed underneath me, I don't know what I'd do. I'd probably just move to Bali or something. So when Chris's business collapses, he just says, I'll move to Bali, because that's what Branson had said. Obviously, Perth and Bali are pretty close. So I know he's in Bali. I know he's starting from nothing again. And I've just built a company helping, get young people to work for people for free. And I had 120 volunteers at this time. I thought I can add some value here. I also had a website already as well. And I'd done some speaking engagements previously. So I thought maybe I've got enough here to convince him I can be of value. And I also done a bit of work with Brett. So I was like, I can sell that for sure. So I call him up, we have this conversation. He sells me this $9,000 program. And I say, look, I want to do this, but I don't have any money. I'm a uni student. I've just built this non-for-profit, but what I can do is I can add value. Let me come and work with you for free for a month. Let me demonstrate my value. I believe I'm worth 100 grand. So that's 10,000 a month. So we'll do a contra effectively. You give me the course and I'll give you a month for free. And then after that, you can pay me. And he said, well, I wasn't expecting to be sold something on this call. I was expecting to sell something. And I said, well, Chris, you said in the webinar, leaders make decisions quickly and change them slowly. So you're prepared to make a decision. And he laughed. He says, look, give me a couple of days to think about it. And I'll get back to you and we'll see if we can make something work. And then he got back to me. He says, look, if you're going to come for 3 months for free, but I'll cover your room and board. I said, done, I'll be there tomorrow. And he's like, whoa, let's slow down. Come in January. This was now December. Come in January because I'm going back to the States for Christmas. And then long story short, 2013, January 7th, I fly to Bali to work with a guy I'd never met before for free for 3 months. I end up becoming his right-hand man, his lead trainer globally, help him build his business up again as well. Just me and him. In January, we recruited 42 international staff using the Bright Lights model that we applied to his business. And then 6 months in, I had probably learned enough at that point, and then I came back and started this business. So just an unbelievable series of fortunate events. But across the board, I've been blessed tremendously with luck. One of the things that I've realized, though, is that your initiative is a force multiplier in the universe. And that the amount of times that things have happened for me just because I've been willing to have a crack have been outrageous, right? So I think there's such value in just going, if I've got a goal, take some bold action. Call up. I mean, now I think about the idea of me just calling you and Wilbert, two successful business owners and CEOs and executives, and calling you up randomly as a 19-year-old kid and say, hey, I want to come work with you. Can I have 15 minutes of your time to have a coffee? I mean, that's a ridiculous fucking statement. And I think because it was ridiculous, it's what probably got the attention in the first place to enable it to happen. So you've got to be willing to go and just go, hey, what do I want? I want to work with you. Let's just cut through all the bullshit and just go straight for that. And I think that that's missing in the world for so many people. And, time and time again, I've done that, and it's a bit nuts, but it's worked. So yeah, that was the.
I think you're absolutely correct with that, Calvin, and it's missing because people lack a belief, and there are two levels of belief. There's a knowing, there's a knowing that something is there, and then there's a mental belief about that something is there. We call that mental belief religion.
Yes.
Knowing is very different.
Yes.
So it gives you that confidence to go out and make that choice. I remember reading a number of years ago about a young guy who was, I think, 16 years of age. He developed an app and managed to get through, I think it was to Bill Gates from memory, and sell Bill Gates the app. And he sold it for $30 million.
Wow.
And I remember the one line in the interview that he did. And the interviewer said to him, how did you manage to get through all the gatekeepers? How on earth did you get to Bill Gates? And he said, I think I was either too young or too stupid to know I couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was just so spot on in terms of your comment before about unjustified self-confidence. Because when we have a purpose, what I observe at least is that purpose gets expressed in two ways. That purpose comes from that knowing inside of us that you've been talking about, that for whatever reason was instilled into you. And then the second part of that is, how do I apply that into this world? How do I apply that into the structure of the universe that we live in with all its negativity and positivity? How do I make that work in amongst this? And I love that your comment before about that it's a force multiplier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is just so true when it comes to our own impact in the world. When we just decide that this is what's going to happen, that just rolls out like a wave. So you managed to convince Chris, right? You've flown up there. You're up there doing 3 months free. What happens after that?
So after that, he convinces me to stay for another 3 months. And to be fair, I worked for 6 months for free, but I was meant to get paid for the final 3 months. I just didn't get paid. And you realize pretty quickly that certain people have certain patterns. And he had a pattern, which was he was used to living a life where prior to this shutdown, he's flying around the world in business class. He's got a team of 100 people. He's got a platinum Amex. He can spend whatever he wants. He's got no inhibitions because he's created this empire, but he wasn't living that life, but he couldn't reconcile back to that life. And so if we had money, we lost it. If we had a deal, it just got self-sabotaged. You could just see the trauma of what he'd been through manifest. And so I realized after a while, hey, the likelihood of me ever getting paid here is not going to work. And I'm also an entrepreneurial spirit at heart. And I knew, my dad's always been self-employed, and so I knew it was only a matter of time before I did that. And I was very transparent with him about that as well. And so I made the decision to step back from working with him and to set up my own thing. And so I came back to Perth. And effectively, I had a model. I knew what had worked for Chris, but the challenge...
Sorry, but also I remember seeing some videos of you doing some speaking engagements for him in Singapore, where you were up the front, you were doing the talking. So it really became a good 6 to 9 months of training.
Yes.
Didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
for
So
you.
I,
Like, it was almost ideal. It was almost perfect because it gave you that platform. It put you up in front of people. It
unbelievable.
literally was a cadetship into
Yes.
your own platform and own business.
Yeah. I mean, for me, if a young person asked me, hey, how do you go about achieving success in whatever it is that you want to do? I would just say, find somebody that's already doing it and then study with them and sit at the feet of the master, right? The idea of doing your apprenticeship, right? Whatever, in whatever frame that takes, is a forgotten thing in our world. We do it in a trade, but we don't do it in any other area of our lives. And to be fair, I remember we had the conversation at the Crown a couple of months ago, which was my apprenticeship didn't start with Chris. My apprenticeship started when my dad was working from home and he's making sales calls on the phone. My apprenticeship started from working in my family cafe when I was 8 years old and selling ice creams on my own in a truck, right? That's where it all started, but I just didn't realize that. So, we talk about how in my first 12 months of business, I did $1.2 million, but I didn't do 1.2 million in 12 months. I did 1.2 million in 24 years. It took me 24 years to have the skills, and then I just put all the pieces together and it took off, right? So I ended up doing effectively 12 months with Chris, 6 months living with him in Bali and learning and practicing with him. And again, just blessed of opportunity because we do an event in Singapore. I always remember this experience.
If I can interrupt you again
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
sorry, Calvin, but I want to make these points because I think they're very relevant for everybody,
Yeah.
and that is again that this concept of apprenticeship,
Yes.
the concept of that you see particularly in a spiritual tradition of the student and the master.
Yes.
And particularly the Buddhist tradition, where you get to a point and the master knows when the student is ready, and will just say perhaps one sentence to him, and that just breaks through to a new level of enlightenment. And to be able to do that, in one sense, takes suppressing or a lack of ego temporarily, at least, to be able to put yourself in that position where you will literally totally do everything that this person is telling you to do. And if you're going to be a student, that's what you need to do.
Yeah, there's a devotion there. There's a surrendering. I think that's absolutely spot on.
Surrendering, absolutely. So you surrendered to Chris for 12 months. You came back.
Yep.
And then how did you begin? What did you decide to do?
Yeah, so two things. One was emotional, one was tactical. So I make the decision to come back in June. I'm still going back to consult with him a little bit to help with masterminds and events and retreats. But my biggest fear coming back was that I was just going to go back to the way that things always were. My dad at that point had started a real estate company with a desire for me to get involved in real estate. He wanted me to do that. We had worked together in real estate before I'd ever done this stuff before. In fact, before I worked with you. And so I knew that it would be very easy for Dad to convince me, for all the reasons we mentioned earlier on this call, to come back and work with him. And that was his ambition. And in his mind, he was supportive of me. But in his mind, it's like, this is how you're going to get paid. Do that for fun. This is how you're going to get paid. He didn't understand the business model. So my fear was that was going to happen. So the very final day in Bali, before I leave, I sit down with an artist, a tattoo artist, and I get Warrior of Light from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, which I think was a book that you'd shared with me. And I get this tattooed because for me, it was like, this is a sign of my commitment to my mission, my purpose. And it's easier for me to make this business now work than it is to explain to somebody 5 years from now, oh, hey, what does that tattoo mean? Oh, that was the time that I went to Bali with the idea to pursue my passion and purpose, and I came back and gave up on it. Right? I didn't want to have that conversation. So for me, there was a ritual in that, in saying, this is who I am now. I come back, and before I'd left, I just asked Chris a very simple question. I said, look, this is the business that you've got now. This is all the stuff that you're doing. But tell me, what did you do in the very beginning to get you started? What was your first 90 days effectively? And he shared with me a very simple model. It was do a couple of intro events, sell a program, from that program, sell another program, then do a couple of other intro events, sell a program, then sell that main program. And effectively, you just build like a Christmas tree model effectively with a pyramid, reverse pyramid, and you just stack it from there. And he said, if you do that, you'll do pretty well. And so I said, okay, well, that's pretty basic. I can do that. Now, the traditional model in personal development seminars, which is what I was wanting to do, was you would align with a promoter who had a huge database and you would stand on stage for them. But at 24, no one knew who I was. No one's giving me access to that. So I had to find an alternative way. So in the very beginning, it was very much hustle and word of mouth. So my first event was at a public library. I had 12 people there, 8 of which my family, and 4 people paid a ticket to be there. And that was enough money to pay for the $150 seminar room hire, if only they were that cheap these days. And that was my first exposure, right? I made that money and then I just reinvested that straight back into the business. And I ended up doing, live events, then a webinar, then a live event, then a webinar. And I did that. And I was very, very fortunate. Again, another blessing. I'm at high school. And one of my mates at high school was a guy called Anders. We'd stayed in contact briefly. He was a good guy, and we weren't super close, but knew of him. So I'm over in Bali, and of course, in my mind, I go, well, probably in about May, I made the decision that in June, at the end of June, I was going to come back to Australia. So in my mind, I go, okay, well, no one knows what I've been doing in Perth. They just think I've been in Bali, having a holiday, drinking bintangs. And I was like, I've got to start producing some positive content out here so that when I come back, I'm coming back with a bit of momentum. So I started doing a bit of some content posts and some motivational posts back in the early days of Facebook. And Anders reaches out to me, says, man, I love what you're doing. I love the mindset. I love this journey you've been on. I'd love for you to come and support my team. And he was a rugby player, so I assumed that's what he meant. I go, man, I'd love to do that. I'm coming back actually in June. I can definitely help you. How many people you got in your team? He says, well, we've got 25,000 people. And I go, what the fuck do you mean you have 25,000 people? He says, yeah, I'm part of a network marketing organization. And one of the young leaders is like one of the top young leaders in the world right now. She's based in Perth. Turns out this young leader is a girl called Peta Kelly, who goes on to become the youngest ever Isagenix millionaire. Her sister, Lee Kelly, was my sister's best friend in high school. We actually went to school together, but she was a year older than me. And Lee was in my year, but my sister was her best friend. So crazy, small world. So I come back.
Again, right?
Yeah. Unbelievable, right? So I come back and I end up connecting with Peta Kelly. And so she introduces me to the whole Isagenix community. We do a lot of work with them. Then I get one of the guys that was at my very first event of the 4 people that paid a ticket, Kim Barrett. He introduces me to a whole nother network marketing company called Vima. And so at that point, here I am, a young person that's got a bit of charisma and a bit of passion and showmanship, has just done this mindset stuff, selling effectively mindset training to people that are in network marketing. And because I was a couple of steps ahead economically for a lot of these guys and I'd started to make some money, now I was selling them on how if they did this stuff, they could also make some money as well. And so it allowed me to just grow like wildfire. And so in 90 days, we did $100,000 just off those networks and just doing presentations. And, I was blessed in the sense that I'd started learning how to present from 12 years old. And so by the time I got to this point, I'm 24, nearly 25. At that point, I'd already had over a decade of speaking experience. And so you put me on stage or in a small environment and just the passion and the drive and determination just blew people away. It wasn't hard to impress people when they didn't expect anything from you. And there was no one else at 20 in their 20s speaking like I was speaking. So that really helped me accelerate some things. And then from that, we then started to grow. I learned how to do Facebook marketing. Obviously, then that took us off. And so we incorporated the company effectively in January 2014. And then we ended up doing $1 million that calendar year, which was fantastic. And then Kim, becomes one of my team members. I'm introduced to his brother, Jason, who is now still works with me 8 years on to this day. Jason's just across the road. And then I ended up going and marrying their sister, Ashley. And we're now, we've been together. We're expecting our first child in September. So it's been a fucking unbelievable journey and just meeting the right people at the right time and just being of service. I've been just tremendously blessed to have been guided on this path.
So what do you love about it?
About the work?
Yes.
I love the feeling of helping somebody expand. The idea of enlightenment, for me, what I really think about that, it's enlightening. It's lightening somebody from the weight they're carrying on themselves. And there's just you couldn't pay me to do some of the work that I get to do with people that are in a dark place and being able to help that person shift. and that might be at an extreme case with a suicide case, or it might be just something simple as somebody that just doesn't believe in themselves. And then realizing if you can just help that, young mom believe in herself, then that's going to impact on their kids and everything else as part of that. So I love this work. I love this. I was actually thinking about this week. I had your session scheduled in today, and on Friday I spoke to one of my friends, Karim, and I did a 2-hour piece with him about the same things. And this energizes me. I could do this all day, every day. I love sharing. I love being able to communicate a message and take all the stuff that I've learned, which I just love learning about, and help that impact in somebody's life, and hopefully help them move the needle forward. So I love every aspect of that. That lights me up like a Christmas tree. The ability to make a difference in somebody's life in a meaningful way, in a lasting way, to know that we were able to create an intervention for them, and that allows them to now go on a whole different path. And our company is called Wild. We believe in either people live in captivity or they live in the wild, and the captivity is here. The captivity is accepting the boundary conditions of your thinking, as Einstein would say. It's not challenging them, breaking out of that and going, actually, what if I was to stand on my own 2 feet, and what if I was to believe in myself? What a radical concept that would be. That's what I love.
I think that's pretty obvious to anybody that's listening to you. So where to from here?
Well, my world's about to change in every possible way from September, because we've got obviously our first child, and I find out the gender of that on Sunday, which I'm very excited about. So that will obviously have a huge impact. But from what I can tell you now, boy. Well, I hope so. Look, I'd be blessed to have any. It'd be blessed to have anything, boy or girl, and I'm just fortunate to have a beautiful child. Hopefully, a happy, healthy child. But where to from here is more of the same. All I want moving forward is to be able to do more of the work that we're already doing and reach more people's lives. And I look back at some of our early seminars with 10 or 15 people. We just did an event in Brisbane, and we had a couple of hundred online and nearly 100 in the room with us live as well. I want to be able to scale that. And, while we're doing that and we're making an impact and we're serving people, I saw Tony Robbins did one on the weekend, 70,000 people. I go, holy shit, that's a whole nother world. So if I can make even a small aspect of that sort of impact in whatever way that looks, that would be enormously grateful for that. So this is what I'm here to do. I don't see myself doing anything else, because I get to choose whatever I get to do right now. I make a heap of fucking money changing lives, and that's all I want to do. I just want to continue to do that better and more. So expand the impact, reach more people, serve in a higher way. It's come up a couple of times this week. I've been meaning to write another book and get that finished. I want to get that done rather than that just sitting on the agenda and the to-do list. So that's important to me. But just enjoy every moment and certainly be able to create a lifestyle for myself and my family, which is rich, not financially, but rich in terms of its experiences as well, that we get to provide and create a wonderful life experience. And I'm very much excited about the opportunity to mentor a little being in the world. I get to do that every day anyway, but a lot of the challenges I'm dealing with are because, there was mistakes made earlier in the day or big lessons that were not fully addressed. So I can't wait for that process and that challenge.
Yes, it's definitely an interesting process, because they most definitely become a mirror for us. Yeah. All the things that we can't see in ourselves become very evident over there.
Yeah.
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
So what, in your experience, is the difference between someone that, despite what they've been through, can decide to make a change, and those that get stuck? And obviously, as change makers, our task is to, work that through. But equally, as I well do, that sometimes people get stuck. No matter what you do, they've made a decision to stay where they are. Yeah. So what do you think that difference is? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to answer that question. If you would listen to Freud, he would say pain and pleasure. They're going to have more pain or they're going to have more pleasure. Viktor Frankl talks about the idea it's all about meaning. And if the meaning is there, then that sort of transcends that. And I think probably I'm more geared towards the meaning angle than just the simple pain and pleasure, because I think that, a great example, I've had conversations this week with two mothers one mother who decided to make a change for herself because of her kids, and one mother that said that she couldn't move forward because of her kids. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting to see those two paradigms paralleled, because
Yes.
it either can be the meaning to do something or the meaning not to. So I think that you get a couple of moments in your life that are significant emotional events, that are moments for you to decide if your life, the way that you've got it right now, is the way you want it to be. And I don't think you get many opportunities that are big like that. I think every day you get a choice to do that, of course, but there are moments where you have, a death in somebody's, in your family, a wake up call, you get fired from a job, you get turned down for something, you get a divorce, whatever it might be. You have moments where you really get to take stock out and look at your whole life. And I think in order to make that change, there's a couple of things. Number one is that you've got to have an acknowledgement to say that I'm not currently satisfied, I'm not happy, I'm not content with what's currently happening in my life. And that's purely a reflection of how I've been showing up. So I think number one is to acknowledge that, you want more. Number two, I think it's absolutely critical. Without this, I don't think anything happens, is you must take extreme ownership. It's, one of my favorite words is responsibility. And I believe in that, there's two words in that. That's the ability to respond. It might not be your fault that you went bankrupt, or it might not be your fault that coronavirus happened. It might not be your fault that, you had a challenge, whatever it might be. It's not about fault or blame, but you have the ability to respond. How are you going to fucking show up? And for me, I think about the 90-10 rule. Life is 10% what happens and 90% what we choose to do about it. So I think there's an acknowledgement that I want more, or I'm not happy with what I've got right now. You've got to take extreme ownership and go, I'm personally responsible for this outcome. And if you put yourself in a position of ultimate responsibility and control for your life, then things can start to happen. Without that, I don't think anything happens. Then I think you've also got to have a vision. And part of that vision as well is intrinsically linked to a belief of worthiness, that I can have something more. I know what more looks like, what better looks like, and I have a vision for that. We talk about it as a compelling vision. You have a vision for that, but you've also got to innately believe that it's possible for you to get there and that you deserve it, because otherwise you'll never dream, right? Most people, the reason why they fail in life isn't because they aim high and miss. It's because they aim low and hit. So I think that those are some pretty critical ingredients. And when I see people that come to our events that hide, or when I see people that come to the events that show up and playful, that are ready, there is a surrendering. Like we talked about this before with the master, there's a surrendering of going that I am no longer trying to justify my life. I've come to a place where I am totally in acceptance of all of it, good and bad, and I just want to be better. I want more. I want to be better. I don't want to be right. I don't care about what other people think of me. I'm not trying to justify why it's been the way that it's been. I'm not attached to the story, because at the end of the day, it just becomes exhausting. I just want to be better. I want to be better for me and for everybody else. I want a better relationship. I want better finances. I want better health. And I just want more out of life. There's just an acknowledgement that I'm sick of fighting the reality. Instead, I'm accepting of that, and I want more. I want to be better, not for even any other reason than I just want to experience more of that abundance that life has to offer for me as well. I think that, I'm not sure if that simply answers the question, but I think that they're probably some good starting points.
I think it profoundly answered my question. So thank you for that. That was great. So what impact do you think spirit has had in your life?
Look, as confident as I am, and as believing in myself as I am, I truly believe and feel the quote, which is from Mother Teresa. She says, "Be a pencil in the hand of God and write a new chapter in your life." And one of the prayers that I say before I get on stage is I'll pray to the angels. And I'll say, I'll speak to my guides and spirit, and I'll say, watch over me, guide me, and protect me, keep me safe. Allow me to do whatever needs to be done, and allow me to say whatever needs to be said to be able to help these people make a change now. And then I just get out of the way. And so I can't honestly tell you that anything that I've accomplished in my life was of my own doing, but rather that I was the sword, for want of a better word. And certainly I'm not the hand that holds it. and I pray to be that. I pray to be that light, that vehicle, that weapon, whatever the analogies you want to use. And I think it's everything. And I think that there are times where I am deeply in tune with that. Certainly when I'm on stage, it's just that's there. When I'm facilitating, when I'm doing this work, it's there. There's other times when I'm trying to run my business that I'm not there, and I hit my head against the wall for a couple of weeks, and then I'm driving home in the car, and then the voice comes to me, well, you've not asked for guidance here, and you've not connected. Oh, fuck, okay, I realize I'm trying to do it on my own. So there's moments when I'm definitely out of that state, and I've got to do more to be present to that and to come from that place as well. That's harder for me to do when I'm out of state in every possible way. But it's the guiding force for me, and all of the impact, all of the good things that I've had in my life have come from being in that place, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, you and I have both interviewed, many people over the years.
Yeah.
And what you just said then is almost the identical that anyone who has got to that point in their life, because it was almost identical for me. As you well know, I came from a business background.
Yep.
Had a major profound change in my life with the divorce, losing the business, rebuilding, all those things. And then came to, I guess, awaken and really want to do this work in the same way that you did. And then over the years, I noticed how connected I could be and how profound it felt and how amazing it felt inside the event to be the vehicle for that, to be
Yes.
the arrow for that.
Yes.
And then I step outside of it and go back to how I used to be.
Yeah.
And again, as you correctly said, pounding, trying to make it happen, do those things until I got to a point where I guess I finally, got a slap across the face and went, this is just ridiculous. You're like this inside the event. You have to become like this in your own life all the time, not just part of the time. And I think the most profound is probably in the last decade for me, where I have truly done what you suggested, which is truly surrendered to that force, to just allow it to guide my life and to be present in my life all the time. And that has just brought such abundance, not just in terms of wealth, because it's brought that too, but, and I'm certainly blessed, I feel blessed for that, but the abundance in terms of relationships, the people that surround me, those that I have in my family, the clients that I have, many who are listening to this right now. And I think that is a process that eventually you get to. You start doing it, you start seeing that impact when you do it. And, I'm guiding many clients to that. And it is a process to be able to get to that point where you truly can go, it's not me. I'm just the vehicle for that. And when I get myself out of the way, life, not just my life, but life goes so much better.
Yeah, without a doubt.